A puppet playing with a puppet? Strange. But that reminds me, I've always wanted to ask you about the beginning of A Thousand Plateaus. Together with Felix, you ask in a passage there how a book can stop reproducing a world, how it can find an adequate outside with which to assemble in heterogeneity. The answer in capital letters is rhizomatics equals pop analysis. I confess I never understood what you guys mean by pop there.
Well, shortly after that, we mention a film by Jean-Luc Godard, Pierrot le Fou, that was quite popular. And we refer to the popular song Old Man River. We even quote a line by Patti Smith: Don't go for the route, follow the canal.
But you were never really interested in pop culture, were you?
It depends on what you mean by that. I was born in 1925, so I was actually already too old when, for example, the Beatles started to revolutionize pop music and the whole pop culture in the mid 1960s. But I was interested in pop art, for example, Andy Warhol and his serial works, in which all repetitions of a beat, memory, and death are conjugated.
As far as music is concerned, it seems you were more interested in stuff like Paul Anka and Claude Francois than in the Beatles. And you were a big fan of Edith Piaf. Her name and a line from one of her chansons also appear in the first version of the Rhizome. Ne nous dérangez pas.
True, but did you know that she also has a cameo appearance in A Thousand Plateaus? The third chapter is titled 10,000 BC, The Geology of Morals. The subtitle is What Does the Earth Think It Is? Now, in French, this is Pour qui elle se prend, la terre? And this line comes straight out of a Piaf chanson, Mon manège à moi.
You also quoted Bob Dylan once, but not as a musician, but as a poet in dialogues. When you present yourself not so much as an author, but rather as a kind of producer, invoking one of Dylan's 11 outlined epitaphs. Yes, I am a thief of thoughts.
This brings us a little closer to an answer concerning the question of pop analysis. For me, pop does not refer so much to the popular, that is, the well known and the beloved, but rather to the underground, the subversive, the anti cultural. In other words, it refers not so much to the Beatles, but rather to the Talking Heads. Remember the beginning of A Thousand Plateaus when we say that one must actively use the cultural load for oneself, for forgetting instead of remembering, for underdevelopment instead of progress toward development, in nomadism rather than sedentarity, to make a map instead of a tracing.
Reminds me of Edith Piaf, who apparently stated, use your faults, use your defects, and then you are gonna be a star.
Actually, I was thinking of something rather different, namely international politics, oppressed minorities, and the need to find a way out of this oppression. Perhaps through music, perhaps through film, but above all, through speaking and writing. What we call pop music, pop philosophy, pop writing, Wort of Lucht, like flight of words, to make use of the polylingualism of one's own language, to make a minor or intensive use of it, to oppose the oppressed quality of this language to its oppressive quality, to find points of non-culture or underdevelopment, linguistic third world zones by which a language can escape. An animal enters into things, an assemblage comes into play. This is how we explained it in our Kafka book.
Sounds more like Franz Fanon than Franz Kafka. You see, Kafka is certainly known and famous, but he is definitely not pop. And your pop analysis doesn't analyze pop at all.
Well, I'm also not a puppet playing with a puppet.
But your books have become quite popular.
Maybe, but that doesn't mean that they have already found an adequate outside.
I see.
Bye bye.
Bye.